I am undertaking the perhaps misguided task of pursuing some further education in my middle. This is an original way to have a midlife crisis, I think. I mean, no wear patches, and I can't afford an MG, so I'm going to because they're kind of crappy now, MG. So maybe I could afford one. Where they make really crappy little four-wheel drives. But I'm going to go on back to uni and studying psychology and criminology again. I started this week, and it's a bit weird. It's a bit weird being on campus with people who I'm old enough to be their parent. That's my Facebook followers will be aware. I've learned something this week. Bucket hats, they're back. I don't know we ever missed them terribly much. I know I didn't, but they're back and they're bad and.
See, when I think of bucket hats, I instantly just think of my mind jumps to The Offspring and then straight away to Crazy Taxi.
Well, Offspring's an interesting choice. I don't recall them ever wearing. I'm thinking more like, you remember that song, You Get What You Give? You Only Get What You Give? It was a really, really big hit. It was in a car out a couple of years ago.
But anyway, no, you know who I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of Weezer.
Wheatus from Teenage Dirtbags.
Yes, that's the one. There we go.
I'd like to apologize to the Offspring.
Yes, I am a big fan of the Offspring.
I've seen the Offspring live before, and I'm not keen for that to change. I haven't again anytime soon, but they did a little bit of a Wheatus.
That's true. It's true.
Anyway, that means I have a little bit less time now. I have actual homework to do. I have to read academic.
Yeah, you've got to do stuff now.
Do stuff, and that might be seen as a good thing, but it does eat up one's time a little bit. But I still found time to watch this week's movie and our continuing quest on Marvel's WandaVision.
Yes, absolutely. We've watched the penultimate episode. We've got one more episode, and then it's like a week and a half before the new Marvel TV show of Falcon and the Winter Soldier comes out. And then
And they dropped an announcement this week about all their upcoming shows. Did you see that?
No, what was it they were talking about?
They did a whole drop. They just dropped a whole list of stuff at their
that one that goes into like 2025 or 26.
Yeah. So it's a
lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff coming out. We'll have a look at that. We can come back. I'll be interested in hearing some of your thoughts because there was some IPs on there, shall we say, that I wasn't instantly familiar with, and I'm curious that you can give us and maybe the audience some insight as to what you think about those shows.
Yeah. Well, shall we jump straight into it and start talking about our chain movie of the week, Only the Brave?
Yes, please. And let's do something original and start with a synopsis.
Let's go for it. I shall read it out here. So the Black Label Media, which is one of the production companies on it, simply put, based on the true story of the Granite Mountain Hotshots, a group of elite firefighters who risk everything to protect a town from a historic wildfire. That sums it up pretty well, really.
It does. It's not a particularly deep film.
It's not, is it?
Now, I had vaguely heard of this before. I recall it coming out, I think, and I don't think it got a particularly wide release in Australia. And I think I saw it, it was one of those things. I've talked about it a lot of times where you roll up to the movies sometimes. Well, I don't, but because I buy my tickets before I get there because I'm a weirdo. But people who roll up to the cinema and see something on the screen and go, do we want to see the movie with Josh Brolin in it, who I've never heard of, or do I want to see Fast and the Furious 72? I know what Fast and the Furious 72 is. I'm going to see that. I had no idea what this really was, and it looked kind of cliche and kind of dull. So I kind of ripped it off and never thought about it again until you mentioned it last week. And it's like, oh, that firefighting thing. Yeah. I would like to formally apologize to Joseph Kosinski, Sean Flynn, Ken Nolan, and Josh and Miles and everyone involved with this production, because I give it a massive disservice by sort of jumping to that conclusion and writing it off, because this is I started out saying I don't think this is a particularly deep film. I don't think it is. It is what it says it is, but it pulls it off at such a high standard, the quality of what they're doing. It does something simple, but it does it incredibly well.
Yes, absolutely agree. This movie is, for people who don't know, they may know the name Joseph Kosinski. He is most notable for Tron Legacy, Oblivion, and he's doing Top Gun Maverick at some point this year.
Like to point out that he has a credit here for a Taco Bell Web of Fries video short, which is essentially a Taco Bell commercial. Which I actually watched on YouTube, and it's very good. As Taco Bell commercials go, I don't have a great deal of context.
I don't know if anyone has a list of like top 5 Taco Bell adverts, but I'm sure there should be one.
This one has it had incredible production values. There's like Josh Duhamel in it. And yeah, it
was it like one of those Super Bowl style adverts?
Yeah, it was like an action movie kind of thing. In like 2 minutes of the fact that Taco Bell sell fries now, and everyone else is trying to stop them because their fries are so delicious.
This summer, the Fry Nation gets upturned.
Pretty
Taco
much.
Bell.
Yeah. So anyway, I'd never heard of him, but I'd seen Oblivion, and that's solid.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, based on his most recent movies of Tron, Oblivion, and this, he's a very capable director. But he's certainly Oblivion and Tron Legacy, they were marred by a lot of ideas that were never properly fulfilled, and I think he did himself a good job of really streamlining it and just telling one specific story, which sounds a bit funny when you're talking about a group of people and just one particular story. But
it's not a special effects film as well, which Tron and Oblivion were very CGI heavy films. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are CGI at work here, but you're not going to see this for the spectacle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas I think maybe the other two films, Tron and Oblivion in particular, you're going to see the spaceships and the cycle things in Tron and
cycle things, light cycles, sir, light cycles.
I've never seen any of the Tron films.
Well, we have a good connection to get us to the original Tron in this movie.
But we're not going there. So
damn you.
I'm being a bit selfish. I just want to go. I don't want to watch Tron. It looks silly.
It is, but that's part of the beauty of it. But anyway, back to Only the Brave. So I'll tell you that for probably about 60% of this movie, I was a little bored because it's a very slow burner. It invests a lot of time showing you little bits of a group of very quintessential American men that are working in the emergency services, and like how pretty much all of them seem to weigh the career and the job they do more than any other relationship in their life. And I think it's to the credit of Josh Brolin and Jennifer Connelly in how they play their scenes together, just showing the subtle difference and a genuine kind of adult grown-up relationship where there's trouble and difficulty, and that two people who are aware, who have gone through a lot of shit, and they're trying to measure that against their own wants and needs versus this is what you need to do and stuff like that. They have this very unified front, especially when they're around the Granite Mountain hotshots, and then you do see more of these cracks and difficulties in their relationship later on, which it works out nicely the way that those cracks get a little bit more revealed to the finale and just how that would feel for someone. Similarly, Miles Teller's Brendan, he is shown very kind of quintessential young guy, thrown out, spiraling out of control, basically just being entirely the wrong kind of person, and then finding a reason. There's a lot of paint by numbers kind of thing.
It's not doing any of those characters aren't being done with any sort of degree of originality. It's nothing you haven't seen before. And here I was thinking we're going to be welcoming our co-host Archimedes on the
No, it was just me hearing things.
There's nothing you haven't seen before in any of these characters. It's pretty standard stuff. You know, the redemption arc of Miles Teller's Brandon versus the stoic leader of Josh Brolin's Eric Marsh. It's nothing we haven't seen before. But I would continue to say the film probably isn't something we haven't seen before. But what it does that we don't see often, it leads on from what you said earlier. It's a slow burn. It doesn't smack you around the face with action and explosions from a first moment. It's not Backdraft or anything like that, the Ron Howard film, which is massively overrated. Like pretty much everything Ron Howard's ever done, except for Apollo 13. But this actually spends some time with these characters. What a novel and original idea, Mr. Mr. Kaczynski. Like some time with characters. What do you want us to care about them or something?
Yeah.
So we take some time. We get to know Brandon and his struggles a little bit. We get to know quite a bit about Josh Brolin's Eric as the they call him supervisor, superintendent. I'm not sure exactly what that's short for. And there are some missteps, I think, early in that process, in the sense that we do get under the covers a little bit with some of the politics of firefighting in the United States. Like we have some scenes between Josh Brolin and Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges being kind of like a county supervisor of some kind, or county fire marshal or something. And the mayor, I didn't forget his name, but we get we get under the covers there a little bit, and a lot of the time I'm sitting there going, sort of throwing names. Oh, they're hot shots, do this, and you're not hot shots. I'm like, what the fuck's a hot shot? I've never heard of that before. One of the things I walked away from watching this film was like, I didn't even know if we have people in Australia who do what these guys do.
Yeah, I've never
seen them do it.
Yeah, it's certainly they don't have. I guess you'd call it prestige that the hotshots apparently do in communities for this, because it seems to be a big thing when they get their certification to be proper hotshots and not second tier or whatever it is they are referred to.
We never get an explanation about that. Like there's no, we just dumped into them with a world of it being a wildfire fighter. And we start to see the struggles of being, they start out, the hotshots, the Granite Mountain hotshots, before their hotshots are a second tier team, and despite their skill and their experience, they are forced to take a back seat to people who are designated hotshots, and they are fighting to get that classification. And the town's like, oh, we're not sure. Do we really need our own team of hotshots? And and maybe this all makes sense to one who lives in the southwest of the United States. You know exactly what a hotshot is and what they do. But to me, it was a little. That was one of my complaints. It was a little annoyed, and I was a little bit taken out. Going, do I need to get my phone out and Google what a hotshot is? Yeah. Okay. Look, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure it out over time, and we get there. But I'm like, there's so much jargon being thrown around at points early in the film that does take some patience to get through. I think it's worth persisting, though, is that later on down the track, when they actually do become hotshots, we have a sense of this is something pretty important, and this is a pretty big deal. And we've been on the struggle with them to a degree. We've been on board. We've seen them, struggling, and then we know how much they want this and how important it is. And we know something about why it's important to them, other than to go, someone wakes up in the morning and goes, gee, I really wish I was a hotshot. Fantastic. This film both shows and tells us why it's important for them to be like that. And more than that, so we actually spend time with also a number of the team members of hotshots beyond Brandon and Eric, who we know are probably going to be our protagonists, but we get to know some of the team as well. And while we don't spend masses of time with them, but I feel that we get to know them enough that by the time the fit hits to Shan or starts to hit to Shan, we care about these characters.
Yeah, I'd very much agree with that. I think one of the failings of this movie is that the way that it's kind of advertised, the presentation of the posters and the even the trailer that I've put into the chat for anyone who is interested, it kind of feels like they're pushing a little too close to that kind of Top Gun kind of vibe when that's not what this movie is.
It does a little bit, doesn't it? And that's kind of ironic considering he's directing the new Top Gun.
Yeah. And it feels it's a disservice because whereas Top Gun, it was made and became a very, very useful marketing and recruiting tool, this could kind of actually be a more sincere, honest version of that in some ways. Obviously, it is a tragic story, but it kind of shows off that life quite well. Like everything about the fact that it seems to be when they get the certification to become hotshots, it seems to be a big thing in the community, and the brotherhood that is on display between them. It definitely, even for someone like me who's never been interested in joining any kind of service such as.
I think anyone like you's never been interested in joining. Full stop. That probably speaks to us both of us. We not. You think we'd be doing this if we would join us? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's all right. But it's I've lost my train of thought now. Damn you and your joke. It worked.
You were sort of saying you make an interesting point. You used a word there, but I think is important. That word is brotherhood. And the film that this probably at times most reminded me of was Warrior. Another film, and not necessarily because of a content matter or any of that nature, in the sense that Warrior was a film that completely flopped when it was released. Complete flop. Because they didn't know how to advertise it. Yeah. And they tried to sell it to people as a MMA fighting movie, Rocky almost, like Rocky with MMA.
Yeah.
And that's not what that film is.
No.
That film's something completely different. And the funny thing is it's found a new life on streaming and I guess DVD because it's a little bit old now. And pretty much to a person you meet, and I think men particularly, to a person, people you meet who see this film, they love it. Like I've never met anyone who didn't like Warrior. And the amount of times you hear the same conversation with people I meet day to day, and they go, "I saw that film Warrior last night. You recommended. I loved it. That was not what I was expecting at all. I was expecting it to be Rocky with MMA, but it turned out to be all about that relationship between the Tom Hardy and Joel Edgerton. Was it Joel Edgerton? Yeah. And their relationship with their dad Nick Nolte, and it was that triangle of relationships which really formed the core of the film. It just so happened that MMA was the wrapping paper they put it in. Yeah. And for men, I feel like that's actually really quite unusual. To a film about relationships and a film about male relationships, they are not common.
No.
They don't make them, like we don't want to see him. I mean, Hollywood doesn't think we want to see a movie, and maybe they're right considering these films flop. That we don't want to see a movie where male relationships are explored that deeply, and that many emotions are stirred up in their audience. They want to see, Vin Diesel going, "Hey, family," or whatever it is he does in that movie. Like
family, honor, respect. Hustle, loyalty. No, that's John Cena.
Well, isn't he in it now? He's not. He will be.
Yeah, soon. He's in the next one.
And that's what kind of where I was feeling halfway through the film, particularly is you sort of that moment, to where they all, once they became hotshots, and you really start to feel those bonds grow between the team members. It really strongly reminded me of Warrior in the sense that this is a big part of a film, at least, is about that brotherhood that comes with being part of something bigger than yourself with other men. And I think this is a good thing. This is not a film that's excluding women. There aren't that many female roles in it that are any good other than Jennifer Connelly. She gets some good stuff to do. But that films about male relationships are a bit rare, and I think there should be more of them. And I enjoyed that aspect of this film very, very much.
Agreed. Agreed. And it was, building up to the end. I think that it was the slow pace of the first 2/3 of the movie was very important to really deliver the punch that is the end, and to make you feel how the character Brendan would feel in the situation that he finds himself in, and it's a tragic scenario, and I think that in lesser quality actors' hands and a more kind of, for lack of a better term, hotshot style bravado to it, if there had been more of that, it wouldn't have worked. It would have felt very, very wrong.
You said it would have been Top Gun with firefighters instead of fighter pilots, and no, you're 100% right. I mean, and again, I watched this, and I hadn't, and I knew nothing about this film other than it was about firefighters.
Yeah.
But when Miles Teller popped up, and I'm like, he's playing a meth addict in this film. He looks very different to any other film.
Yeah, he does.
He's playing a very, very different character to a type of character he played before, which is kind of young, precocious, talented, smart, kind of, confident characters. Whereas, of course, he's kind of the exact opposite in this, in the sense he's got basically no self-esteem at all. And you mentioned before, he finds his motivation to try and do better, which is nice, if not original. But I was reminded how good an actor and how well-rounded an actor Miles Teller is, because I think he pulled off every aspect of his role in this film. I was completely convinced by his transformation from a listless, worthless drug addict, waste of a human being in a drug addict at the start, through to being the character we see by the time the finale rolls around. And the way he handles his part of that finale is brilliant and convincing and incredibly moving. And I was 100% on board with his journey. And I think we talked about it last week. It was like, how does he not get more work? Is it because he doesn't want to work? Is it because Fantastic Four sucked and he spoke out about Josh Trank being a dick? I mean, didn't everybody say Josh Trank was a dick? I think we can agree now. Yeah. Josh Trank's probably a dick.
Probably, yeah.
Is it because he picks shitty roles? Because if you look at what happened after Fantastic Four, we have Allegiant. I don't think those films are very good.
I think that Allegiance situation was probably more contractual obligation.
Get a job, which I've never even heard of. War Dogs, which wasn't good. Bleed for This, never heard of it. Thank you for your service, never heard of it. Only but Brave, which we're talking about today. Too Old to Die Young, never heard of it. And that's it. So since Fantastic Four, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 features, 7 if you count Maverick, which is in the can. We just know it's ready to go. It's just not being released because COVID. So 6 or 7 features in 6-7 years is not many.
Yeah, and you look at the movies that are upcoming for him. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 movies in there, and only one of them is a franchise piece, which is very unusual in the modern day cinemascape. We've got Top Gun, and that's arguably a franchise because this is just the second movie. But it's a Tom Cruise movie, so it's pretty
Tom Cruise franchise.
Otherwise, it's Escape from Spiderhead,
which will be a Netflix movie he's doing with Hemsworth, which is okay, I guess. But
The Ark and the Aardvark, The Fence, Flag Day, Not Without Hope, After Exile, and The Life and Times of the Stopwatch Gang. Like, okay, maybe he's just very selective about what roles he takes.
And look, I mean, if that's what it is, and what, more power to him. I'm sure he got paid very, very nicely for his role in the Fantastic Four. I hope he did for that piece of shit. So
if
you're a big time movie star, and I think Miles Teller is, I'm assuming you get well paid, and maybe he just works on stuff he's interested in.
Yeah,
that happens out there, right? And good luck to him. But I just feel like on the kind of quality of his role in this film, I feel like he deserves more prestige roles if that's what he wants to work. I remember our first film, I think I mentioned last week, the first film I saw him in was Spectacular Now, which was his breakout role.
Mm.
And I was really impressed with both him and Shailene Woodley in that film, but how good they were. And I thought, these guys are going to be big stars. Shailene Woodley did get her franchise, and it didn't go well. You don't see a lot of her anymore. I would just hope that doesn't happen to Miles, because I think he was outstanding in this film. And just to step sideways, how good is Josh Brolin?
Josh Brolin is really a solid actor, although I will say that he is skirting a line at the moment, and partly because of casting, but also just because of the way that he is growing up. He is just, I don't know whether it's because of Men in Black 3, but he is becoming so much like Tommy Lee Jones, and he sounds so much like him in so many of his movies. It's like, okay, this is weird. He's fantastic, but I can just see him as a young Tommy Lee Jones doing this role as well. It's weird.
I think he takes himself less seriously than Tommy Lee Jones. When stuff like Deadpool 2 is, having a laugh at his gruff character roles that he tends to play. He does tend to play like that kind of cowboyish role is becoming a bit cliche for him. But I thought he had a lot of gravitas in this film.
He plays it really well. It's not oversaturated or anything like that. He's not that kind of hardened Sarge with the heart of gold kind of thing. He actually has these very obvious and open human moments. He's not afraid of giving people opportunities, like just in the opening sequence where he's just standing there being considered and measured and just looking at how the fire is moving and things like that. He's someone who's very much in tune with himself, and that's something that Tommy Lee Jones never really does.
That part of the film, and every time that happened, that reminded me of another film, which really doesn't deserve to be mentioned in the same category as Only the Brave, because it's a much lesser film, and that was Twister.
Oh shit! No, yes, you're right.
It's like that Bill Paxton's character's like sniffing the dirt. He's like, "Oh, the hurricane's going that way,"
Oh no!
That's
You've ruined those moments for me.
It's like they were kind of like it's going that way.
So like, there's rain coming. How do you know? I can smell it.
No, it's a bit of a trope. This film is tropey. You're going to be watching it going, what are these fucking guys on about? I've seen all of this before, and we guarantee you've seen pretty much everything this film does. But I don't think you've seen it done as well as this. I don't think you've seen the time spent on character. I don't think you've seen the acting as good as this. We haven't even mentioned Jeff Bridges, who doesn't have a lot to do, but does it very well. I quickly mentioned Jennifer Connelly, who has the meatiest female role in the film, and does everything to an exceedingly high standard. Because she's Jennifer fucking Connelly. She, as George says, she's always good. She's got one Oscar. I think she was nominated for another. What did she win for? Beautiful Mind, I think.
Yes,
she did. Yes. So she's at a top class actress, and she doesn't age. I think she's still she's 50, and she doesn't look it. She looks maybe 30. I think she might be a replicant. So the Fort Kampf test for her.
It's just so weird when you look at her career and you just think of going back 21 years. She was in Requiem for a Dream and she looked the same. You go back even further, you go to 1991 and it was The Rocketeer and she looked the same. And you go to even looking at her first movie, which is Once Upon a Time in America, Sergio Leone gangster movie. Very slow. It's a beautiful piece. It's probably akin to The Irishman, I guess. I haven't finished watching The Irishman, so I can't say for certain. But even then, she's just a small version of who she is now. She's just physically grown up. Nothing else about her has changed. She was commanding in that role. She's commanding in every role.
Miss Foxy B is attributing to her eternal youth to her involvement perhaps with David Bowie in some ways that would be inappropriate considering her age at the time. We don't endorse that kind of thing on this show. This is a family show. But that would be potentially...
Now we have our co-host.
That would potentially be one reason. There is a theory out there that says the world has fallen apart since the death of David Bowie in 2016, and
that's fair.
I think there's some merit to it.
Yeah, that's fair. So, Travis, unless you have anything else to talk about with Only the Brave.
I just like to give a shout out to Travis Taylor Kitsch, sorry.
Taylor Kitsch.
He kind of has a bad rep out in the place because he's kind of associated with the failure of John Carter. You're in the John Carter fan club here, right? We both enjoy this film very, very much and feel like it's desperately underrated, even though it wasn't perfect. It could have been better. It was still very good, I think.
Yeah.
But Taylor kind of copped a lot of shit after that because, I think he
had a really bad year with a lot of bad luck that year because the same year as John Carter, Battleship came out, and that is just trash.
And he's I think he's a model rather than an actual actor. If you look at his face, he's not Laurence Olivier. Okay, the guy's not going to win an Oscar anytime soon, but he can fill a role. He can fill a space if they're right. A little bit like Gal Gadot. I talked about it a few times when she's in.
That's fair.
When she's in Wonder Woman, of course, they write a role when it's done properly, unlike more recent one. They write a role that specifically works for what Gal can and can't do. They did it for Schwarzenegger 30, 40 years ago. Write roles that fit into what Schwarzenegger's skill set is. He's not good. He's not like that scene in Last Action Hero. To be or not to be. Not to be. Who said I was a fair prince? You're not getting. I would pay to see Schwarzenegger do Hamlet, but back in the day, but we're not doing. But I think Taylor Kitsch in the right role, and this is 100% the right space for him to be playing in. He was really good. I was really impressed.
Absolutely agree. He played the balance of arrogant, precocious ass that is bit of a bully, especially to Miles Teller's character in the beginning, but you slowly see more of the genuine side of him and just see how much of the first half of the movie is bravado and bullshit, and he's just someone looking for purpose and reason and an understanding and relationship, and he plays it really, really well.
So kudos to Taylor. You have some fans here. But I get to pick the next movie, and this was kind of possibly the hardest one I've ever had to do because there's just so many options open to me that was so tempting.
You could have just taken us full circle back and gone back to Hudson Hawk with Andy McDowell.
I could have gone a Groundhog Day, which is objectively my favorite.
I'm surprised you're not taking us there, my man.
That would be a boring jerk-off session for people listening. It would just I really like this film. And the beer goes, no, it's been done to death, especially by me. I was very tempted to go with a deep cut on Jeff Bridges, and he was in Heaven's Gate, the famous Western flop. But that goes for 3.5 hours. Once Upon a Time in America, that goes for almost 4 hours. And I'm like, I don't have that much time to watch. I don't think of that kind of attention span anymore to watch a 4-hour film. Then we could have gone something super great, super fun, like The Big Lebowski. Been a long time since I've seen The Big Lebowski. I'm not going to do it. In the end, you have commitment issues. Tell me about it. I've got to pick a movie. In amongst I was super tempted. I should note, side note, to go back to Jonah Hex. I was saying to someone the other day, that's a film that should have been good.
Yep,
it should have been good. Great subject matter, good cast.
Yep.
What? And you listen to the story of Jonah Hex. You actually sit down and read what is the story of that character. Say that's fucking cool. I want to see that movie. That I'm not going to do that to you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take us back to my sweet spot, to a film I think where I first noticed Josh Brolin's abilities as an actor. And I
Goonies.
think the Goonies. No, I had to watch that for the throwback. My other podcast available now, wherever you download a good podcast. This week we review This Boy's Life. The Wayne's World episode is now available for download. No, not Goonies. The one that really made me stand up and go, Josh Brolin, eh?
Yeah.
That movie is Oliver Stone's W.
Oh, good call. Good call.
I have to
Elizabeth Banks as well, right?
It has Elizabeth Banks, James Cromwell's in there, Toby Jones, Sandy Newton, Scott Glenn, Richard Dreyfuss, Wes Chatham. I think you'll find a way out of this. This is not a death machine.
You missed an opportunity for us to go to Mimic.
Oh, no. Thank you very much. I will say this, though. I haven't actually Googled where we're going to be able to find this yet. I'm assuming it's a relatively recent film.
You'd think it would be available.
I think it'll be available, but if we can't, he said it, we're going to watch Mimic. Assuming I can find, if we can find that.
It is available on Amazon and YouTube's.
YouTube's of you. Okay, well, there you go. So, legally available, which is what we like. $5 is steep to rent, though. But anyway,
yeah, that's a bit pricey. I think that's the president's tax.
Maybe it's the Oliver Stone tax. Like he needs to make his money up because no one sees his films anymore.
Yeah, that's fair.
That will be our assignment.
Nice. Next week is 2008's W.
And of course, if you don't know, it's a film about George Bush.
Yeah. Shall we move on to our other regular section?
A regular section for people that tune in every week. That would be the Marvel TV shows WandaVision.
WandaVision, the penultimate episode. And I've just put the trailer for WandaVision in the chat again. I'm getting better at this, people. Slowly but surely.
It's taken us 10 years. What did you make of this week's episode? Last week you felt a little ambivalent, I should say, about parts of it. You didn't enjoy some of it. Yep. Did you have any strong feelings about what you saw this week?
It was more or less what I expected, which I guess is its greatest sin, especially considering they've done so well at doing other things for the huge bulk of the show. But we are coming into the final stretch where it's much like Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame. Endgame was basically all payoff, so everything felt good to watch, and so getting all the answers to my questions and everything like that. This was a little too on the nose for a lot of it, but it did explain the why of the construction of the show in so many wonderful ways, because it ties into the early life of Wanda and Pietro, where they're watching all of those probably pirated DVDs of all of the American shows that have come over. I Love Lucy, Malcolm in the Middle, all of the ones that have been the design for all of the sitcom shows. So it explains that, and it very much explains a lot of what's kind of going on, and it ties in the adverts that we see in all of them as well. So Tony Stark. Hang on, I've got a bloody page of notes somewhere. Yeah, look at a page of notes. This is all stuff that I've been working on all since the beginning, but for a breakdown, we had the Stark toaster in the episode 1. Then in the next one was about Strucker watches, and it was Hydra, and it was Lagos. The yo-yo magic, still don't quite know how that ties into it all. And then we've got Nexus, and all of that is really starting to come into it, and it's really revealing the stages of grieving for Wanda. And that's what it this episode really honed in on. This is her, how she created a reality that is helping her cope and potentially eventually move on from the tragedy of her life, essentially. But now we've got this other element coming in of Agatha Harkness, who My God, Catherine Hahn, she's great. She's a really good actress, and she's
He's good at
playing.
being annoying.
Yeah, and she's that annoying character because this episode opens up with basically her origin of being a witch that is basically has been doing things against her coven, and I'm guessing sentenced to death by the fact she's kind of blasted with magic, and then she sucks it in and blasts it out and kills everyone around it. And that feeds into a lot of the theories of, okay, is she kind of, has she been manipulating Wanda to get her to a point where Wanda is essentially a tool for Agatha Harkness to bring about Mephisto, for example? Like, why did she encourage the creation of the children and all of that sort of stuff? So it feeds a lot of the theories that are out there. But it also kind of felt a little bit like, oh, people are really liking Wanda. We haven't given her enough of a reason why. Especially in the last couple of episodes, they've been really nailing home the importance of the events of Age of Ultron, which, as we all know, is generally regarded as quite a misstep, particularly for how it handled the Maximoff twins. So I think this is a bit of a mea culpa for that, and just like, okay, here's a lot of your story. Side note to that is Vision very much gets shunted to the side in this episode.
I think this was far and away the weakest episode of the series so far.
Mm-hmm.
Like 100% by a country mile. And I know if you look at the ratings on IMDb, they still say the first two episodes are mid-7s. Last time I checked, this was high 8s, I think early 9s. This episode, which and there were so many 10 out of 10 ratings, and I just couldn't understand it. And people were like, oh, this is far and away the most emotional I've ever been in the episode. I cried multiple times. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Like, this episode was weak. Like, I learned nothing new in this episode. Everything in this episode I already knew. We all already knew everything that happened in this episode, minus the rather obscure thing, the origin story of Agatha, which didn't really give us much of information, really, other than the fact that she was evil then, and she was all powerful and killed a bunch of witches. And I'm like, how did she get so powerful?
Yeah.
Don't bother telling us. You know, that might be useful. Miss Foxy B says people are conditioned to view a certain way of digesting media. I would agree. And hence that's why people thought the first two episodes were boring, which makes me grumpy because they really, really weren't. But this episode I found really dull and like repetitive. So what did we actually learn apart from Agatha's origin? We got a shit ton of Scarlet Witch backstory, which we already knew. We hadn't seen it fair enough. We didn't see the Stark Industries bomb, or we didn't see him watching the sitcoms and stuff like that. Really, did I need to know that? That's a one-shot thing, right? That's one shot. Hey, they watched sitcoms at home when she was a kid. Fantastic. Move on.
Because for that whole sequence, it came out much better, and it was one of the better scenes in Age of Ultron where they are telling Ultron about this unexploded bomb. And it just came out organically. It gave them reason, means, motive for their actions in Age of Ultron, and it was not just an exposition dump. It was...
This whole episode was exposition. All of, minus, 5% at the end, start and the end. The rest of it was 100% exposition. I didn't need it. Sorry, I'm not an idiot. I got all of that. I'm 100% on board and up to date with who Wanda is, why she's sad, why she's. I wouldn't say I'm up to date with why she's doing what she's doing, and I still don't think I am. I mean, you can still say, oh, she's sad, she's mourning, she's grieving, and your explanation of the grieving process is an interesting one. But I don't think they necessarily gave us the actual answer to that question. Like, we don't really know how she's doing it.
Yeah. And it certainly seems like we're not seeing much in the way of good forward progression of this. So maybe they're going to feed that into her becoming a villain, where she's not willing to.
Miss Foxy B says she doesn't know. I assume you mean she doesn't know why she's doing it. Why would anyone? I would hope that the creators of the show know why she's doing it. If you're going to tell it, unless you're Damon Lindelof or J.J. Abrams, telling the story without starting and telling a story without knowing why your characters are doing what they're doing is a particularly bad idea. And the person on the other end of the line here knows exactly what I'm talking about because he wouldn't do that with his characters.
Now, the thing that actually jumps to mind now, especially something else that I've been watching this week, this episode is titled Previously On. It feels so much like one of those stereotypical moments in an anime series where you've got a big fight and then suddenly it cuts back to a flashback to fill in the blanks for reasons of other characters involved in this fight sequence. It's like, okay, so this should have been told through the story organically because you've not really done this for the rest of the any of the rest of the show. And I get it that it was 3 episodes before we got the official breakaway to the present world, and it would have felt very, very disproportionate and weird to have these flashback moments. So then it makes you wonder, okay, do we actually need them? Answer is no, you don't actually need them. The only things that you kind of needed, I guess, was the how she interacted with the Mind Stone and that sequence and why she survived.
If we need it, I don't think we did need it. We know that Hydra fucked around with a Mind Stone and she got powers. The actual visual of a Mind Stone coming out of a Tesseract or the Loki Scepter and doing stuff. I mean, I will put my hand up and go, maybe they'll do something later on down the track that made that scene important. But as it stood, I know how she got the powers. They told us this already. Get on with the story.
The only other part that was revealed is she didn't steal Vision's body. She just created it. And we were previously shown that and told in the show that she had gone in and stolen it. So that does actually serve the story because it makes you wonder, why did what's his face lie? Director Tyler, why did he lie?
And I think we get some hint about it at the end where he's
got this other vision. I wonder whether Hayward could potentially be Mephisto.
Yes, that would make sense.
He's manipulating all of this and tricking people in. Maybe. Who knows? It's all up in the air. But it feels like there's still a lot of questions that are not going to be answered in the last episode.
There's been a story going around today, which I shared on my Facebook page. You commented on as saying you thought it makes sense. And I think you're right. That from a director going, or the creator going, I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed with the finale. And his thrust being that there are a million fan theories out there about what's really going on. Obviously, at most, one of them can be right. Potentially none of them. And hence, everybody who's not part of that one fan theory that potentially gets it right is going to go, oh, it's shit, because they didn't happen to, live up to the one thing I thought it would be. So that's a fair way of putting it, but I really hope he doesn't cop out and go and do basically nothing in the last episode and give us a half-assed effort and go, well, I'm just being creative and this is the story I wanted to tell. And people were always going to be disappointed and get a pass because the first 7 episodes were fucking brilliant, which I'll give it to him. Okay. They were great, but he really needs to give us a conclusion. And I mean, like for a 30-40 minute episode, which is what most of them have been, I would say Miss Foxy B anticlimax endings are black. Like it's what you do. I would suggest they are the norm. Almost nobody gets a finale right. The only one I can think of off the top of my head that completely nailed it was The Sopranos.
Controversial choice.
Well, I mean, unless you want, the people who didn't like The Sopranos ending are those idiots who thought the first 2 episodes of WandaVision were boring. There's a 100% crossover of those people. If you thought the first 2 episodes of WandaVision were boring, don't watch The Sopranos because it's too much for you. But it's a 30-40 minute episodes mostly, if I recall correctly. If I've been paying attention to the length of the episodes, unless they get a a longer episode this week.
Well,
There are a lot of loose ends to tie up this week.
Yeah, it's like, okay, what's going to happen with Vision? The stinger at the end with this white Vision. Are we going to have a Vision versus Vision fight? No one, Marvel is already very guilty of having heroes go against just evil versions of themselves, and that's a literal version of that, potentially, because how often is it that the clone is good? That's another sad trope. Wanda versus another Dark Witch. First time she's ever referenced as the Scarlet Witch, and it was in almost like a moniker, a title that is known in the witching community. So like, you are the Scarlet Witch, this is chaos magic. So maybe there's some kind of actual genuine meaning to the phrase Scarlet Witch. Missy, WandaVision has not yet been put on for a season 2.
It's unclear, though. It does apparently run. They have said in the past that it will click into or run into or connect to or lead into
Doctor Strange 2.
Doctor Strange 2, the Multiverse of Madness. We've seen nothing yet to say exactly how.
Well,
obviously,
there was again. Disney are awful at this because they do it in all of their damn shows. They put out a teaser for the finale episode, and there's Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange in it.
Oh, you didn't know that? I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's right there. Right there. It's on YouTube. You just put.
Why would you look it up though? Why would you watch it though?
I was just curious.
I've gone out of my way not to watch anything to do with the last episode. If someone said, "This is the spoiler. This is the teaser for the last episode," I wouldn't watch it.
That's the thing. It doesn't even say spoilers. Anything.
If
It's mass planted out.
But if it says the teaser for the last episode, I just wouldn't watch it. But I don't want to see anything. I don't want to see any shorts, any teasers.
Why would
nothing?
They do it? They do it so often. And
I mean, yeah, that is dumb, and you've spoiled it for me, so I'm upset. That's why I'm upset, because yes, it's stupid of Disney to do that, but I just wouldn't watch a teaser for something for a TV show.
Yeah,
but it will fall into that, and so maybe that will preclude the need for a season 2, because the events of this show will lead into what happens in the new Doctor Strange film.
Yeah. Maybe because Wanda is apparently quite a big role in Doctor Strange 2. But then you've still got what the hell's going on with Pietro? Is this Pietro or is it Peter? What's going to happen with Monica Rambeau? There's a lot of stuff that's just like, okay. Like the character of Darcy, last seen at a crossing in a car. It's like, okay. You're leaving a lot of balls in the air, and you've just used a whole episode, a 47-minute episode, to not progress anything. You've just
exposition.
Yeah, you've just literally gone back and told us no new information. All of this has come through in the storytelling that you've done to this point.
I guess the other thing to talk about, Miss Foxy, is as you are aware, Disney this week dropped some information about their release dates and schedule for shows coming up, and there is nothing on there about a WandaVision season 2. So that's not to say it couldn't happen. I would just say that means there's nothing on. It looks like there's nothing happening now.
Yeah, it seems to me like a lot of the scuttlebutt, so to speak, online is that the ramifications of WandaVision are what cause actions in Doctor Strange in the Madness of the Multiverse, or whatever it is, Multiverse of Madness, as well as a couple of the other shows. Like there's going to be some kind of recoil for it in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and particularly Loki as well. It's like, okay, considering the trailers that we've seen for Loki, I can see a similarity there. I can't really see much of it in the Falcon and Winter Soldier things. And yes, it makes absolute sense. If you're going to be playing around with altering reality, the Multiverse of Madness, it's right there in the title. So
there's also the in the article we were talking about today about the director saying he felt people would be disappointed in it. Matt Shackman, some of the quotes in there from him, they sound like someone who's one and done.
Yeah.
No, the challenge as a director was unique. I'll never have a job like this again. This was the job of a lifetime to be able to draw on all these different skill sets. But what does hold it all together is it has a big heart. It's a love story. It's a story of loss. I think that resonates even more in this crazy pandemic that we're all trying to survive right now. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, that just sounds like someone to me who's done what he wanted to do. And now that doesn't mean he won't come back. They won't get somebody else in.
Of course.
If Disney want a second season 2, there'll be like a line $1 million long who want to do a season 2.
Of course,
but that sounds like one and done to me.
Yeah, I think so. I'm still excited to see what is going to happen in the finale, but I feel like I wonder if this is a tale of kind of two stories, kind of, because it's 9 episodes, and the first 4.5 episodes were just fantastic. They kept on building. They were fresh, unique, alternative, and just developing the story in a very intelligent way. The characters were working genuinely. Everything was working really well, and it feel like it's kind of, all right, we've kind of run out, we've posited all of this, and we don't quite know how to pull it all together in those last few episodes. We need to just tie it off. And I hope that Matt is able to pull it together for this last episode, but it just seems like, I wonder if it was kind of like, all right, I've got this crazy idea for a Wanda and Vision show. This is how it starts, boom, 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 and this is how it ends. It's like, okay, cool. And then when it comes to actually production side of it, it's like, oh, we should have had more episodes, or we should have told things differently.
And let's face it, Disney kind of have a track record right now of not putting things on the whiteboard with post-it notes and planning things out ahead of time. Someone comes in with a cool idea and they go, that's a cool idea, you're hired. Now, that said, that's not really Kevin Feige's style. That's more of a Lucasfilm thing. So I'd be surprised. Look, I'm going in with low expectations just because, like I said, from my perspective, people time or not on a series, even a limited series like this, is rarely done well. Yeah. So even multi-season shows like Seinfeld, for example, it's a comedy, I know, but Adverts, the finale of that was kind of lousy. Breaking Bad's finale was good, maybe but maybe not as good as it could have been. So it's hard to do this well. Yeah. And when they set the bar, in my opinion, extraordinarily high at points in time this season, it'll be difficult to see exactly how they do it well. Yeah. I'm not going to be disappointed. I commit to not being disappointed and giving it shit if it just turns out that my fan theory from the other week was wrong. I think it sounds cool if it is Mephisto and Fantastic Four involved. That sounds like a really cool thing to add in, even if it's a wink and a nod at the audience. But I won't be disappointed if it's good and doesn't do that.
Yeah, I think, like I said in my post before, the problem is that this is quite easily, arguably, the most talked about show in at least a few years. And because it has been released episodically rather than a whole season dumped, it has given people time to come up with their own theories and invest in these theories and do that conspiracy theory thing of pulling out the information to back up these theories. And so they're never going to be able to satisfy everyone. There are going to be people who are going to look at whatever they come up with for the season finale and go, that was perfect, that was amazing. There are going to be people who are going to look at it and go, okay, they took the easy way out.
And they're getting a pass already because, like, in my opinion, this episode from last week is the equal highest rated episode in the season, 9.2 on IMDb. And I just don't understand. I don't understand that. It didn't. People seem to be super, super impressed. They said the words Scarlet Witch at the end. And, like, I don't get it. I don't understand why people thought it was so great. It was, I knew everything. I knew it. I knew it. And I even thought kind of the Agnes, so the Agatha reveal was kind of a bit shit. A bunch of lasers shooting at each other. Yeah. If the rest of the episode had been good, I would have been fine with it, I'm sure. But anyway, I'm being a little bit harsh. I still really love it. They've done this so well. I've enjoyed the series. It's been, in a year where so little new stuff's being released.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I do think that it's arguably one of the it's certainly the most invested in a Disney property that I have been in for a number of years, because I went into it with low expectations, and Disney have just been making movies to make billions. That's what they do. They make the safest movie possible. They put some bells and whistles on it, and everyone feels good. And they've made lots and lots and lots and lots of money. This at least has some inventiveness behind it, and I will absolutely give it respect and kudos for that.
I think we've talked about it before. Marvel has had carte blanche to do that for a little while now. We've talked before at length on the show about how Marvel don't make superheroes anymore, superhero films. They make genre films with superheroes in them. Really clever, and that's why they've been able to differentiate themselves, because DC is still making superhero movies like they were. Yeah, they're where Marvel were 12, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But we have now word out of Sydney that the Thor: Love and Thunder is going to have Melissa McCarthy in it.
Yeah,
as a cameo at least. I think it's just a cameo.
I don't like her.
I don't like Melissa McCarthy either, but it could be a funny cameo.
I'm just worried. I'm worried. I'm not enjoying some of the things that I'm hearing from Thor: Love and Thunder.
In Taika, we trust.
In Taika, we trust. But I'm just saying.
I'm always interested in the fact that Melissa McCarthy can get into the country for an extended cameo.
Fair point.
Like, I mean, if she's in a scene, a la what Matt Damon was in Ragnarok, that's got to be what, a week of filming max,
maybe.
And she's playing the Punch and Judy version of Kate Blanchett's character from the last one, whatever her name is, Hela. And that's funny. I get that. That's funny. But I'm like, but it's really hard to get into the country right now. I think, like, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of effort to come into the country. You got to isolate for like 2 weeks to come in and like to film like a week.
Yeah, and even Matt Damon, he was a cameo in this just because when you see all the information about it, it's like, oh, that would be funny if we could get him in. Oh, he's actually in the country while we're filming. Come on over.
I assume they brought him out here specifically for it. I don't.
No, he was over here filming something for in Thor Ragnarok, and
right. Sorry, if you're talking about Ragnarok, I thought you meant now.
Now he's actually in the movie, and it's like, okay, that's all right, fair enough.
It's a lot of stuff. I mean, that said, though, I can understand it. Like, if someone said to you, you're Melissa McCarthy and her husband Ben Falcone, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Would you like to come and spend 2 or 3 months in Australia? Considering what's been going on in the US with the virus,
that's a fair point.
I don't think you'd have to twist my arm very hard. And Chris Hemsworth, have you seen his fucking place in Byron? Like, I don't know if she's staying up there, but like, there are worse parts of the world to be in right now than Australia.
Maybe that's it. It's just a Chris Hemsworth house party.
Pretty much. Like, hey, the virus is virtually eliminated here. Would you like to come over? Yeah, sure, no worries. It's interesting that we shot that Liam Neeson film here in Melbourne late last year, I think. There's quite a lot going on in the country right now. It's actually kind of interesting. I wish they were doing more to take advantage of it. Like, people in Australia do get kind of pissy, but like, why are famous people getting to come in and don't have to, when they're Australians trapped overseas, and you're like, yeah, I can see that, but you let in a Liam Neeson, and then a couple of hundred people are at work for 3 or 4 weeks. And you let a whole movie production in, and they all come in, and people work, and
it's actually generating money.
Generates money, and they take that money, and it is exchanged for goods and services. So it makes sense to a degree. I think I can see the simplistic version. So I wanted to transition off WandaVision for a tick, and let's hope no one has COVID. I assume yes, that's a good point. I assume they have to do some form of isolation. I think if you're a movie star, you get to isolate, like, not in a quarantine hotel. You get to isolate, like, somewhere fancy. Like you can hire a fucking mansion and you can isolate there.
Well, from the some of the stuff that's coming out with Tom Cruise movie for, I think it was Mission Impossible. Basically, he organized. Obviously, he's one of the producers of the movies. He just went and said, "Okay, we're essentially going to make a commune that is the filming company."
Did he not organize like a cruise ship or something?
Something like that. Yeah, he basically just paid for everyone to stay in this one location. So it's like, okay, we've got our own little kind of base of operations where you can go and do things. You can move around with everyone here. You are not allowed out. If you do anything, I will scream at you.
Yeah, see, he actually hired a cruise ship for his
Tom Cruise ship.
But yeah, I see what you did there. He's not scratching for it though, so
that's true.
He'll be okay.
There's one way of making them all listen to his Scientology BS.
Pretty much, yeah. That's a good point. I'd be like, oh, I have to isolate with that asshole. But it's interesting that there's a lot of filming going on in Australia, and like I said, a smarter federal government than ours would be introducing extra tax breaks, and maybe they are, and I don't know it, but I severely doubt it because they don't rate the film industry, they don't rate the arts, and they'll be going out to people in the States going, "No COVID here." Mm-hmm. I mean, in fairness, Victoria, we've had our problems. Film up in Queensland, no COVID there. Mm-hmm. Film in Perth, no COVID there. We'll give you a nice cruisy, isolate in the mansion for your big movie stars and your directors and stuff. Come and film shit here, and we'd be doing really well because you still, I mean, either the things are getting better, but it's still probably harder to film in Europe and the United States.
100%.
But I did have a question for you. I wanted to talk to you about the release this week of a bunch of information about Marvel's streaming stuff, properties, IP. It's scheduled for its shows over coming years, and so this year's going to be busy, right? So we obviously know Falcon and the Winter Soldier is coming up next month. Sorry, later this month. Then we have Loki. I think we have What If, Miss Marvel, and Hawkeye scheduled for this year.
I think so. Yeah, it's a busy TV year for sure, and we've still got the release of Black Widow movie that's just sitting there waiting, and they're pushing on with production for Doctor Strange, as well as the Eternals movie and Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings. So they're very busy, that's for sure. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out, because
some of the properties I wasn't instantly familiar with that I wanted to chat to you about. Let me kind of find the icons, but someone sent to me the other day of all the different things on it. But Moon Knight, for one, it's been kicking around for a while. I don't even know what Moon Knight is.
I have never read anything about Moon Knight, and the way that it was pitched to me way back when, and I don't know how accurate it was essentially if Batman was gay and had superpowers. So I have no clue about that.
Okay. A gay superhero.
Which would be ballsy for one thing, and especially ballsy for Disney, where let's say they're not exactly the most overt of promoting.
Bit different now. They're taking some sideways steps. So in Australia, and I don't know about the US, they've got a Disney Plus have a side called Stars, which I think has their R-rated bizzo on it, or their not family-friendly bizzo on it. I don't know if that's something extra you have to sign up for.
It's just part of now.
So currently, Black Widow has a US release date of May. I'm calling shenanigans on that. I don't think it's getting released in May.
I reckon it'll end up getting, depending because Disney have got Raya and the Last Dragon, their new animated movie, coming out very, very soon, and it's going into cinemas and on their Disney exclusive paid for premium service. Depending on how successful that is, If it is more successful than Mulan, then we may very well see Black Widow do the same thing in May. Yeah.
Midnighter and Apollo, Miss Foxy B says, I think Midnighter is gay.
Oh.
Midnighter and Apollo is a comic book series.
Well, according to IMDb, the synopsis for Moon Knight, which is a 6-episode TV series starring Oscar Isaac with Ethan Hawke as well. So that's a good duo right there. Mark Spector is a former CIA agent whose life is saved by the moon god Khonshu. So,
okay.
There you go.
Also coming up, according to Wikipedia, Shang-Chi is scheduled for a July release date this year. These are Marvel films.
Yes.
And the Eternals, November, and the new Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, in December.
Now, the Spider-Man movie names just sound like they're the wrong way around, and it's just talking about a drunk night home. So Spider-Man, No Way Home. Oh, and then after about 10 minutes of wandering around, it's like, oh, I was so far from home. And then you get home and it's like, hey, homecoming.
I would enjoy seeing that Spider-Man film. So like being a cross between Spider-Man and The World's End. Simon Pegg movie. Spider-Man goes for a big night out on the town and can't get an Uber. You can't search the surge pricing. Oh my god!
I just can't swing when I'm drunk.
It's like I could totally. It just never happens to me. I swear to God. Like it's just because I've been drinking. So those are the films scheduled for this year. Moving on from there, the Multiverse of Madness is next March. I didn't realize Sam Raimi's directing that. That's exciting.
Yeah. And it's reuniting him with Danny Elfman for the music. And only earlier this week, Bruce Campbell was teasing that he has got a role in Multiverse of Madness as well.
Exciting about that. We've talked about For Love and Thunder. It's scheduled for next May. Black Panther 2 next July. Captain Marvel 2 next November. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania in 2022. Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And there's also a Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special in amongst there somewhere, which is interesting.
I am so hoping it is just them taking the piss out of the Star Wars holiday special.
Surely. James Gunn, we trust. And then we have TBA Fantastic Four.
As well as TBA Blade.
That's in amongst that. Of course, we know that's going to happen with Mahershala Ali.
And it made a couple of people pissed off because apparently it's going to be PG-13 rated, not mature rated.
They really ought to change that. I hope they change their minds on that.
And you've got Deadpool 3 in TBD as well.
In terms of the television stuff, we've talked about WandaVision with Falcon and Winter Soldier, Loki. What If is currently scheduled for mid-2021. I'm very excited to see what that looks like. I think that sounds fucking incredible.
I'm excited for it because I love that in elsewhere stuff. Like I've talked about it as a way that they could do standalone movies for the DCEU stuff, which is cool. And especially as we get closer to the Snyder Cut of Justice League coming out, he's been talking more about what the follow-up movies would have been like, and the next Justice League would have been set entirely in the Nightmare world. And it's like, oh, that would have been awesome. That would have been so fucking cool. But
no, it wouldn't be.
Yes, it would.
Because Snyder would have done it.
You're just a godless heathen. It would have been really cool.
I like Zach. I just think he was maybe biting off a little bit more getting chew, but all will be revealed. I think this month in 2 or 3 weeks, we're getting Snyder Cut.
I think, 2 weeks.
We might have to dedicate an entire episode to it because it's going to be very, very, very interesting.
4 hours long, I think. Yeah.
I watched it again recently, and I'm like, I don't know how you fix all this, but good luck to you, my friend.
Yeah.
Miss Marvel. Sorry.
Yeah. But going back to What If, I'm curious to see if it's actually going to have any ramifications on the MCU, or if it is just going to be all tease for stuff that doesn't necessarily ever have to happen, because What If is coming out in the same movie phase as all of this stuff about multiverse. So yes, they could just go, oh, this is what's happening here, 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 and here. And what's going to be curious, what I'm curious about, is if they potentially, passing of Chadwick Boseman, it's very sad because he was very good as Black Panther. They haven't said anything about what they're doing beyond they will recast Black Panther. They haven't said who is going to be doing it or anything like that. I'm wondering if they're going to use a what if episode to introduce the new Black Panther, at least with the voice.
It could be a really soft intro, right? So for those who aren't familiar, the what if episode is essentially we have Jeffrey Wright starring as the Watcher. Jeffrey Wright is in Westworld and the Hunger Games, Boardwalk Empire. You'd recognize his face. Yeah. He stars as the Watcher who narrates the series. So essentially the Watcher is, think of it as somebody who is flicking between channels. And when he's flicking between channels, he's flicking between different universes. And so he can see how the Battle of New York in the original Avengers movie turned out in infinite number of different universes. If, instead of the Hulk turning up to belt Loki in time, he missed the building or something, I don't know, and landed next door. He can flick between, obviously he probably picked something a little bit more interesting than that. So the idea being that the Watcher can actually revisit some key moments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and actually see how they might have played out differently had one moment or another gone left instead of right.
Yeah.
At a high level. So we can have a look at what would have happened if Thanos had won the battle in Endgame. For example.
Well, that would probably be kind of boring.
It probably won't be one of them. That probably won't be one of them. Any number of different things. It's an animated show. So that means that we might actually be a good chance of getting it this year because animation's a little easier to do right now remotely than actual live action shooting. So maybe that'd be a nice soft intro, a little bit like in the holiday special, go back to the holiday special of Star Wars, how they introduced Boba Fett. You can introduce Suri. Let's face it, Suri's almost certainly going to be the new Black Panther. And if it's really well received and people like it, you can go, oh, yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. We introduce it. If people fucking hate it, you've got a little bit of wiggle room to go.
An escape route, yeah.
Oh, well, that was just what happened in What If. It doesn't mean that's what's going to happen, you know. You got a bit of wiggle room.
Yeah.
One question, a couple of I had here questions about. One that I had never even heard of before was Ironheart.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
And apparently that is centered on Riri Williams' Ironheart, which is basically a female Iron Man. So that's going to be exciting. Okay. That's what it looks like in the picture. I'm sorry. And Armor Wars, which I think finally means War Machine's getting his own stuff.
Maybe it would be nice for him to have a bit of a limelight taste, much akin to how Wanda has had this show to really showcase her more. It'd be very nice to actually kind of show off Don Cheadle because he's a very good actor. And if you actually give him an opportunity, he'll do some really interesting stuff with that. And especially considering the kind of the patriotic element of him and the way that he dealt with the Sokovia Accord and things like that and the ramifications of that, you've got a lot of juicy potential there to do something really cool. So I hope so.
And I think probably the one I was most looking forward to was the Hawkeye series. I think we've been asking for something Hawkeye centered for a long time. I still think that Hawkeye and Black Widow should have had, especially after Endgame. I don't understand why they didn't just go tonk and go and hit the home run that was a Hawkeye and Black Widow movie. But that was probably a political decision. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see when the Black Widow film lands. It could be really good the way it is. I don't know. But Hawkeye is a character who's been desperately underrated in the series. Not that Hawkeye, okay, he shoots arrows, right? I mean, whatever. But he was like literally revealed in a fucking cameo in Thor,
Thor.
the original. You're like, hey, that's Jeremy Renner. He just got nominated for an Academy Award last year.
Yeah.
And like he's in like a 30-second scene of of Thor, and you're like, oh, so
and he's actually maintained that. Well, aside from having a complete breakdown between Infinity War and Endgame, the way that he's just there with like up in the bird's nest, so to speak, and he's like, you want to hurry up because I'm starting to root for this guy. He's maintained that quip, genuine characteristic throughout every movie where he hasn't been mind wiped or mourning in a very brutal way. And so it's like, come on, just give him, let his wings soar, please.
And I thought the most interesting thing they did with him was that at the end of in Endgame, where he turned into this kind of like vigilante samurai kind of dude.
Ronin,
and I'm super disappointed. That's not what they're going to do apparently with a Hawkeye series. And it's going to be about handing the mantle of Hawkeye off to the character Kate Bishop, which will be played by Haley Steinfeld, apparently. And I don't know. I mean, it seems like how to put this without sounding like a complete arsehole, but there seems to be a massive move towards making sure that their roster of superhero films is as diverse as possible.
I don't know how much of it is that versus how much of it is them trying to do in TV what they have been doing in their movies, like we said, about dressing up a buddy cop movie as a superhero movie. They are doing very different things with their TV shows, and we talked about it previously about WandaVision kind of having a Lynch-like Twin Peaks oddity to it, but never going full Twin Peaks or anything like that, but just going on that sort of like slightly more mature alternative mind meldy kind of route, whereas the trailers for Falcon and Winter Soldier are very much more of your classic Tom Clancy espionage kind of action series. And then you've got Loki, which Loki has definitely cemented himself as a bit more of a comedy character, especially in recent times, and having Owen Wilson in there, who is very much known for comedy, and just the way that the trailer is playing, it sounds a bit more tongue-in-cheek, a bit more of a comedy kind of thing. And then you've got Hawkeye, which the trailer, again, still looks like it's aiming more for like a young adult kind of thing, almost like you've probably not watched the movie, but Alex Rider, that kind of young James Bond kind of thing, where it's like, oh, it's scary for if you're a 12-year-old, kind of Doctor Who kind of crowd, that age group. It's scary, but when you get older, you don't really see that it's scary. And then
the other part is maybe they're trying to replace Jeremy Renner. He doesn't want to do it anymore. I don't know. He's done it for how long was it before? Was what, 9 years ago? 2012.
Yeah.
Maybe it's. I just like is they're replacing Hawkeye with a female version of Hawkeye. We have a female Thor. We're going to have She-Hulk. We're going to have Ironheart, which is essentially a female Iron Man. We're going to have Moon Knight, who is apparently gay. I don't have a problem with characters having. It just seems a little forced. A lot very quick.
Yeah. I think part of it is the fact that the original Avengers was very male heavy, for one thing, and it was a credit to Scarlett Johansson that she was able to stand up to fucking Robert Downey Jr. just knocking it out of the park every time as Tony Stark, as well as Chris Evans really coming into his own and getting this level of confidence in his ability. He's a good actor as well. And then they're kind of going, all right, so we need to kind of counteract that, because I think maybe they're looking back at that notorious bit in Endgame that we both detest of that final fight sequence, like where all of the female superheroes come together so that they can have a lineup of themselves. It's like, no, that's not how it fucking was. You were just showing us a battle where they're all over the goddamn place. They're not going to all just suddenly converge.
If it feels forced, I'm not interested.
Yeah, it's
and you start to put people off. But I mean, like, I'm desperately do want to say I don't have a problem if they do it organically. It's going to be fine. I just disappointed in that one particularly because I feel like if his show is about him handing the mantle over to somebody else when he never really got a chance to actually assume the mantle in any meaningful way, it's a bit disappointing. I was sort of hoping a Hawkeye show would be all about where did he come from? Why is Hawkeye really good at shooting arrows?
Maybe we actually get to see the Budapest thing that comes up multiple times between conversations with him and Black Widow.
Miss Foxy, why would you have one when you can have two movies? He's not going to get to TV show. I guess you make a fair point, but I mean, you're right. It probably makes more financial sense to split it. But I just felt like, I mean, either one was screaming for a Black Widow movie 10 years ago, like, you know, almost 10 years. As soon as she was in there, I'm like, I want a Black Widow movie. It was fucking Disney who said people don't want female-led superhero films until you know, Wonder Woman made all the monies. So I just sort of, those guys, I mean, that they have so much chemistry on screen together, Jeremy Renner and Scarlett Johansson and those characters, and we have a hinted at backstory through the Budapest thing and that fight scene between the two of them at the end of Endgame. It just, I don't understand it. It's like it just made sense that you would tell the story of why Hawkeye and Black Widow were so desperate to die for each other.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to see that story? Yeah,
absolutely. And from the looks of the trailer, it's really sad that I don't think we're going to get any of those answers in the Black Widow movie because it definitely seems to be...
It's an origin story, right?
Yeah, it's an origin story for Black Widow before she meets Hawkeye, or maybe it ends with her meeting him and we'll get the explanation as to how he was able to turn her from being this independent spy to working with S.H.I.E.L.D. Maybe. I don't know. But
all will be revealed in time. I'm very hopeful that May date comes about. And thank you for you. I'm glad. I feel a little better that I know nothing about these properties and neither do you. I do have the encyclopedia, the Marvel encyclopedia at the back. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but I did get it out last week. And Agatha Harkness is not in there. So it's of limited value at times.
But then if you look at the credits, it says Agatha all along. Yeah.
Freaking me out, man. the one thing that confused me the most in the list of things that I saw was a movie called I Am Groot.
I kind of hope that it is literally just like a film or a short film that's just set entirely on Groot's homeworld, and it's just brilliant storytelling through visuals, and all we ever see or hear is them saying "I am Groot." And
how often do you reckon? How many ways do you reckon they make Vin Diesel say it? Like how long is he on set?
There was something that Vin Diesel said. He apparently said that he had to do like over 100 different variations of "I am Groot" for the first Guardians of the Galaxy. That
would take a couple of days.
I reckon so.
And I imagine Vin Diesel doesn't come cheap.
And I would kind of hate to be the voice director for that scenario because Vin Diesel is a bit of an intense guy. And so like, okay, Vin, can you just say I am Groot? So like, I am Groot. And so like, cool. Now, can you say it like you're hiding a secret? I'm like, I am Groot.
Line.
I am family. No, damn it, wrong movie.
Word in the street is he got paid $54 million.
Vin Diesel?
For Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, that is obviously up for debate, but that is a figure I have found on the internet. So it is quite obviously indisputably true.
Well, if you find it online, then yeah, I mean,
I didn't make it. I didn't put it online, but yeah. If you said I am Groot 100 times, someone better at maths than me can figure out how much it is per I am Groot. It's a TV show, by the way. There is apparently a show, a Marvel TV show called I Am Groot, which will be. It would be interesting if it was just like a silent movie type thing or something.
Or it's literally the cheapest thing that they've done, and it's just every scene that we have seen Groot in, but it's from Groot's point of view. So he actually has these full long sentences that he speaks, but everyone else is just saying, "I am Groot."
Or is everyone called Groot? Wasn't there an episode of Futurama where everyone's got this Marklar? No, was that Rick and Morty? I can't remember.
I think that's Rick and Morty.
But everyone in the alien planet's got exactly the same name.
Hey Mark. Hey Mark.
Pretty much, like, but it made sense to them. But anyway, I just thought we'd actually it was South Park.
There you go.
It's called Starvin' Marvin in Space is the episode.
Yeah. So good.
I'm going back way back. This is 1999.
That makes me feel old.
The people I was working with at university yesterday weren't fucking born yet.
Yeah.
So for them, that episode is like the fucking Flintstones.
Oh no! Stop putting it in context like that.
Mind blown.
Horrible. That is horrible.
It's a slightly less PC version of a Flintstones.
Oh, goodness me. Only slightly though.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back, the cat, fucking the Muppets is on Disney Plus now with disclaimers at the start.
Yeah, I know. It's so weird.
So, maybe I haven't watched the Flintstones in a long time. It wouldn't surprise me if there was some shit on the Flintstones that you just wouldn't do today.
Yeah. Now, I want to just quickly talk about episode 3 of Clarice on Star.
Is it getting any better?
It's finding its feet, and it's an interesting set of feet that it is choosing for itself, because there's the episode 3 is called Are You All Right? And it's essentially centers all around the FBI questioning the suspect for this supposed serial killer. And it lands in a very interesting position where it's becoming more of a serialized show. There's definitely more of the story tying in. Like I said at the end of last week when I was talking about episode 2, it felt very much divorced from it, and it was more of an opportunity to just grow the characters without having to worry about serving the ground a story. This one comes back to that main story for sure. And the character work that they put in episode 2 definitely pays dividends in this episode. And it pairs its time between them interviewing this supposed serial killer as well as mandatory psychological evaluation that Clarice Starling is still going through because of the Hannibal Lecter stuff. And stylistically, it kind of feels a little bit like Mindhunters Light, where obviously being set in the 80s, the technology kind of feels dated, and the way that they're setting the show and lighting it, and just everything about it very much feels like that kind of slightly antiquated detective FBI show. It feels a little bit like early days of the X-Files kind of thing, where it's all suits and the stark lights and things like that. It's very of the time, which fits very nicely. And the psychological games that the characters are starting to play, and how each character is trying to kind of psychoanalyze everyone else and how they're interacting. It's getting interesting. It's taking too long to get here, but it is slowly developing into potential, particularly the things that happen in episode 3. Much more of a conspiracy element comes into it in a much grander way, but not but still leaves loads of questions. It's like, okay, I'm starting to get some theories on who could be involved in this and who could be the prime targets and things like that. But it's still not quite enough, and it's frustrating that I'm going to watch episode 4. Right? I said 3 was it.
He was good enough to keep you on board for one more.
It's good. It's just good enough to keep me on for one more, and I hope that episode 4 finally really starts that proper ball rolling of story development and world building, because it feels very actors studio right now. You've got these actors doing overall good performances and fleshing out interesting characters, but the rest of the world seems kind of devoid and empty. And it's like, okay, now put them in a scenario and see what happens. See how they are changed by the world and how the world changes them. And I hope that we get that, because it's a 10-episode show. We're getting to we're a third of the way through, and it very much feels like the first third of a movie where it's like, okay, we're setting everything up. Like, okay, that's fine. But each episode is an hour long. That's 3 hours that you've been setting things up, and we still haven't really shown anything. Get to it now. Now you need to start punching. And I hope that they can do it, because there's a lot of good elements going on here. Whether they can actually pull it together, I don't know. Hopefully I'll have a clearer idea of it at the end of episode 4. One thing I am enjoying is the fact that I don't know really who the bad guy is. I haven't worked out how it's going to end. I've got some theories. So maybe playing...
Your superpower is waning.
Yeah, they're definitely holding their cards very, very close to their chest. I just hope it's that and not... we don't even know either.
You have to watch next year.
Because, we don't forget that this has got Kurtzman on it, so it could very well be, we don't know how it's going to end either.
And
they're going to go to an alternate dimension.
Kurtzman was responsible for Lost, if I'm not getting that wrong.
He was one of them.
Mm-hmm. One of the worst offenders for setting up an intriguing premise and then going, we don't have any shit.
Yeah.
And then fucking it right up. I haven't got around to it again, but I haven't been. But how could I when the new series of Punky Brewster is on Stan? I'm going there.
No, you're not. No, you're not. I can stop this stream anytime I want.
Challenge accepted.
We're just gonna have airing issues suddenly. I want to talk about Punky.
It'll be next week. It'll be like, who the fuck told me to do this?
Remind him, everyone. It was him.
I could have been staring at the wall. Miss Foxy B disapproves of my choice. I'm going to do it anyway. How bad can it be? I used to watch that show when I was a kid.
I kind of feel like we need a Press Gang remake.
Don't ruin that. You know what? I know a lot of people are dedicated to memory of that show. I never liked it very much. I was more of a Degrassi guy.
Fair enough.
Did you get that in the UK? Was it all British telly after school?
No, we got other stuff. Like we got Neighbours and no, not Neighbours. Neighbours. We got Shortland Street. That was my jam.
That was New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
I think Miss Foxy B is from New Zealand, so she would be very familiar with Shortland Street.
We got Degrassi, and obviously stuff like Beverly Hills 90210 that just seemed to go on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. We got quite a lot of it. It would always kind of randomly be on some random thing. Like a lot of it came when we suddenly got our 5th terrestrial channel. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, Channel 5. It was basically weird import stuff and cheap light porn.
That's
good.
That's
what it was.
You guys didn't have cable?
Well, there was
satellite or what is it, Sky?
There was Sky, but we couldn't afford that. And Long Melford only invented electricity in 1992, so
The Melford, but it doesn't close. So
no, it doesn't close. It's true, but it did run a newspaper article when it when it finally got its first ATM. It was newsworthy.
Does it have traffic lights?
It does have traffic lights.
And an ATM. It's a virtual metropolis.
It's a virtual Vegas, man.
The city that never sleeps.
It doesn't close.
It says it it should be on the sign out the front. Be like, we never close. And it's interesting. Like, I mean, like, I was watching this. I was thinking of asking you this. And this is a very, very random question for George that has very little to do with our normal topics of interest. Occasionally I will watch, if I'm just doing something else, I'll have a TV on and I'll just put it on YouTube. And there are people who do videos who just walk around various cities of the world with high def cameras.
Okay.
And you can just like walk through London's West End, walk through Tokyo. I can't travel.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be able to travel anytime fucking soon. So this is as close as I get to traveling, is watching other people walking around. This is what I would do.
You're doing it on your VR.
You probably could. I actually did watch a show the other day, which was in VR. It was an interview with the guy behind Ready Player One. Okay. But you can actually, there's actually an app on your Oculus. You can watch movies on your VR. But I didn't really feel like watching World War Z again. I know you'll be shocked to hear that. I didn't want to pay to see that movie again. It's a good point. I should see if they're on the app. But sorry, on my Oculus. But I find it relaxing. That's what I do when I go to a foreign city. I just go that way.
Yep.
I just start walking, and especially if it's like somewhere with internet access, I can always get an Uber back to where I'm going. Hopefully. So I just go, let's just go that way for an hour and see what's there. I'm not visiting Pakistan, so like I'm not going to get murdered probably. And that's what I would totally do if I was somewhere like London. I'd just be like, let's just start walking. So I do watch these channels of just people walking around parts of London. I find it fascinating that they're walking around London during lockdown because it's fucking dead.
It's like 28 days later.
Everything's shut, no one on the streets. And you'd probably find it more interesting than me, having lived there. But one thing that has shocked me and appalled me and made me wonder out loud, do people really do that? Parking on the side of a street in London. Like, people are parking nose to nose. Yeah. Like, some people are parking that way. Some people are parking that way. Like, what is up with that?
Yeah, you don't have to park in the same direction.
That's weird. I've never seen that anywhere else in the world.
It was weird seeing it when I came over here, and it's like, oh, that's weird. It makes sense.
You park on the side of a street you're driving on. So in the UK, you drive on the left like we do here in Australia.
Yeah.
If
you're driving along on the right-hand side and you see a park on the left, you just whoop.
You go over the wrong side of a road and scooch into it.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. What a world we live in.
Yeah.
Today I've learned something.
London is not a place for parking, though.
I would imagine not. Not. He does. The guy, the channel I watch quite regularly is called The Watched Walker.
Uh-huh.
And he does walk around some very fancy neighborhoods. And I particularly noticed this. I think he was walking around the Portobello Road.
Oh, yes. There's a lot of money there. You can smell it.
And you just look like the houses are beautiful and like the cars are all very fancy. And you're like,
yeah,
I don't think I could afford to walk down that street. They'd probably have me arrested.
That's the kind of place where you know that people like Damon Albarn, Jude Law, Daniel Craig, those kind of guys, they all live there. And
so that's where you can go to meet celebrities, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you're just walking down the street, and like that's where I met Damon Albarn. That's where I met Jude Law. They were just walking down the street, and it's like, oh.
I met someone at a party this weekend, and this is topical. I met someone at a party this weekend who used to be he's a builder, works in the construction trade, and he used to live and work in London for a little while.
Oh, yeah.
And guess whose house he ended up working on for a while, helping build?
Mine.
One Alex Garland.
Oh.
And he was telling me he had an opportunity to be one of the extras of the zombies in 28 Days, but he was traveling soon, so he didn't get to do it. But the interesting part of the story is, I was saying, Alex Garland. Oh my God, I love Alex Garland. I really enjoyed his book, The Beach. The Book of the Beach was much better than the film.
Mm-hmm.
I think you liked Ex Machina. I know I did. Annihilation was fucking weird, but it was good.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Garland's a real talent. And I was like, Alex Garland, one of my favorite stories in cinema, is he got paid $1 million for his script for Halo, which is one of my great unfilmed things I would love to see. Mm-hmm. And the person I was talking to, like, oh, yeah, he totally did. Because he told us that's why we were building this house for him. This is the house that Halo built.
The house that Halo built. I love it.
And I was like, oh, that's why I've just read it somewhere. And it's like, oh, no, that's definitely true because he told us that's where he got the money to build his house.
Jesus.
This is very irrelevant to what we normally talk about, but it's something we've talked about on the show years ago, but I would love to have seen what that script looked like.
Yeah. It's probably available online now to actually read, and I'm curious to read it. I'll see if I can actually track it down.
I was talking to him, the person at the party about that. I'm like, I'd love to read the script to see what it's like. He's like, well, I know what his address is. If you want to go there and break in, it's probably in a filing cabinet somewhere there. I'm like, legally, I would like to read it legally. Like, if you give me his address, I'll write him a sternly worded letter. I'm sure he probably can't because probably owned by Microsoft. And I think I read recently that they're doing a TV series based on Halo now. So,
well, there's been a lot of stuff. Like there was a podcast series that came out in advance of Halo 5, and it's
2 days ago, Halo TV series reveals new look at the Warthogs and Marines.
There we go. Now, changing subject. I have some homework for us both. I think that we should get ourselves to cinemas to watch Doug Liman's new movie, Chaos Walking. This is Tom Holland, Daisy Ridley, and directed by Doug Liman, the man who seems to make perfectly average to good underrated movies. And you think about Edge of Tomorrow, Bourne Identity, Jumper, Fair Game, Swingers. And I think it's fair that maybe we should actually, go and see one of his movies because I think that he's made some fun stuff, and it's been interesting kind of launching stuff. Like he launched the Bourne saga, shall we say?
It's showing at the cinema up the road from me.
Yeah.
So I think I'll have a better chance of seeing it more easily than you will.
There's cinemas where I work.
I was going to say, you have to drive home afterwards. I get to walk 10 minutes home.
Just because I have to drive an hour.
I'm going to ask you a favor. I'm going to do it, that you are not to tell me anything about it.
I will say nothing.
Stum. I will see it, and I will go. I remember last time you and I went to a film in a cinema we knew nothing about. We went to Melbourne Central to see a movie. We didn't plan it, and we just rolled up. I'm going to see a movie. And then we were like, oh, there's nothing on. And we ended up having to see The Grey. And you're like,
yeah.
It was really bad. Like, I don't even know anything about this movie, and I hate it already.
All right. Well, I will keep stum about Chaos Walking. And we will, because, I think it's important that we support some cinemas. And, it's nice to be able to actually go and see something new at the cinema.
I was just going to say, it's nice of you to give me homework when I've got real homework to do. Thank you.
That's your choice, man.
Cool.
Your choice.
I have to read things now for school.
Yeah, well, you chose it.
Yes, what you get for choosing to better yourself.
Yeah, how dare you try and get smarter. How dare you get smarter.
How dare you take advantage of things. Okay, no, I do. I actually enjoy going to see. Obviously, if people didn't watch last week, seeing Promising Young Woman was very enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, apart from the fact that I liked the film, it was just nice to be back in the cinema again.
Oh yeah.
For the first time since I think I saw Tenet maybe October.
Mm-hmm. And I really like the fact that you have to socially distance as well. It means there's less people in the screens too.
Which is what we did. We were doing this years ago.
Yes.
Where are the least people in the cinema? Over there, I guess where I'm exactly going to book. If I had to sit next to somebody at the cinema, I'd be like,
mm-hmm.
The only time I did it willingly was when we saw Endgame and I had to sit in the front row.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. There's the golden rule. There is one person that you never, ever sit next to when it's a movie neither of you have ever seen before. Shay.
Who's that guy? Why did they kill that guy?
Patria's like that too, isn't she?
I would kill him if he was with them. It wasn't really with them. It's a good thing they killed him then. Patria has got better. She has got better.
I think it's because she's been shamed enough.
I know.
Shay still has no shame.
Yeah, I think my regular WandaVision viewer, I actually have to pause WandaVision, and you know who you are. And sort of we have to talk about what we've just seen.
Mm. All right. Well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I think that brings us in. We've had a long episode. We talked a lot about WandaVision and the surrounding MCU entirety. But thank you very much for joining. Thank you, Miss Foxy, for joining us for so long. And anyone who's
you can jump in and listen if you want to ask questions. Like Miss Foxy can jump in. Our streams at 7:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Summer Standard Time, Melbourne time, whatever time you can Google it. 7:30 to 8 o'clock. Usually, we'll be live on Twitch. We will be on the Facebook. We'll be on the YouTubes. Jump in and you can ask us questions as well and interact with your charismatic hosts.
Well, you're the talent. We've already established this.
It's a burden that I have to bear.
Hey, you do it well, my friend. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Just a quick rundown of what we talked about this episode. Our chain movie was Only the Brave, and we will be following Josh Brolin to 2008's W. We had our thoughts on WandaVision episode 8, the penultimate episode, as well as the slew of Marvel movies that are coming out because Disney are determined to own and produce everything under the sun. I talked a little bit about episode 3 of Clarice on Stan, and then we set ourselves some homework for watching Chaos Walking, the new Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley movie. Next week, teaser for everyone, I'm going to be talking about Demon Slayer, a very, very popular anime in the world at the moment, and it is now, season 1 is now on Netflix. So that is what I will be talking about next week.
That's something for all of us to look forward to, anime fans especially.
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm going to let Travis go because he's got school tomorrow.
I don't. I really don't.
You just ruined my joke. Shut up. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.
Good night.